Hey guys, welcome into the program today. Welcome back to Valve Live for this week. This week, what I want to talk about is the importance of 10,000 hours. So, obviously, we talk about production, we talk about technology, we talk about all kinds of fun stuff here. But today, what we want to talk about is the need for 10,000 hours in our culture today, right? So, as you know, there's 1,000,006 people on Instagram, on Facebook, on LinkedIn, even on YouTube, talking about what they know about this or that or the third thing. But the reality is that most of them aren't experts, right? I can't tell you the amount of things I've seen on YouTube where someone's telling you how to do a mix minus, or someone's telling you how to do a virtual call, or how to mix something sound wise, or do something in lighting or video production, and they don't actually know what they're talking about, right? There's a significant amount of that out there. Now, when I was coming up, I had a mentor, a guy named Peter Dubois, who was a theater director who had founded a squat theater in Prague, right shortly after the fall of the Soviet Union, right? And what Peter always used to talk about, that theater later went on to become the official theater of the city of Prague in the Czech Republic. But what Peter would always talk about was the need to find what he would call your own personal bohemia. And what he meant by that was a place that you can ply your craft, or you can hone your craft, or you can refine your skills cheaply, right? Now, I'm based in New York City, right? And New York is frequently in the top 5 list that Forbes puts out every year, every other year, of most expensive places to live in the known galaxy. I'm obviously being a little bit hyperbolic, but the reality is that New York City is a very expensive place to live. Los Angeles is a very expensive place to live. DC is a very expensive place to live. London, Paris, Tokyo, etc. These are all very expensive places to live, and these are not places where you can easily learn and grow, because you're constantly having to have money coming in to be able to afford to exist, unless Pizza Rat is, bringing you slices while to the bench that you're living on in the subway, right? I mean, I kid, but the reality is it's expensive to be here, right? So what we have to do in especially in an industry like technology or production, especially, this is a highly competitive field. So one of the things we've got to be able to do is figure out a way how we can hone our craft cheaply and affordably. Now, for most people like myself, that meant starting at 9, 10, 11, 12 years old and doing stuff at a time before you have responsibilities with rent or a mortgage or car payments or children of your own. That's not possible for everyone. So a lot of people turn to YouTube and the like to try to learn from what others have done. Going forward, we want to do a little bit more teaching and a little bit more talking about some of the things that you can do. But the reality is that you've got to get to 10,000 hours. If you want to be a professional in the field, you should not be getting to those hours in front of your clients, right? Or in front of your employer. You've got to get to expertise. In today's world, right, everyone thinks they're an expert. You go on Facebook, for example, everybody will argue with you about geopolitics, climate change, religion, pick a thing, right? Most of these people don't actually have any legitimate expertise in any one thing or another. They're just talking junk on the internet. So let's begin to talk about, for a couple of minutes, what expertise looks like, right? So let's talk about sound design, for example. I spent a lot of years as a theatrical sound designer, right? You have to know what the spectrum that a particular sound exists in, right? For example, the human voice doesn't really exist below 100 megahertz. So when you're mixing sound, you can roll most of that off and turn that off. There are certain instruments that only exist in the high ranges or the low ranges, like a bass guitar, for example, or a proper bass. does, only exists in the lower register. It does not exist in the higher register. So you can turn that off, right? So there are things like that. It's helpful to know. And when you get to the level of expertise, you can hear it. It just becomes natural. It just becomes muscle memory. You just don't even think about it, right? You just do, right? I was watching the movie Top Gun Maverick recently, and there's a scene in there where Tom Cruise's character Maverick says over and over again, "Don't think, just do." Like he wants the fighter pilots he's training to get to this place of where their brain is turned off, because I would presume, I don't know, I'm not a fighter pilot, but I would presume in a job like that, thinking about something too hard gets you killed, right? Well, in the production world, in the world of technology, when we're doing live streaming things like this, you have to be able to get to this place where when you're in the middle of an event, things are going to happen, and you need to just be able to respond without having to do the whole thought process and analyzing. You should just have a built up reservoir of experience that you can rely on, where you're not trying to actively solution and actively figure stuff out. So let's take a minute or two to just think about and look at what that looks like, right? So if I get into a live event environment and I have a problem with a camera or a microphone, I should have the experience to be able to triage and troubleshoot that like this, without having to think about what the possible scenarios could be and run through those in my head. Because in a live environment, you often don't have that kind of time, right? You often don't have the kind of time to try to process through that when you've got people watching, people on the line, etc. You don't want to have to think about it like I just did there. You don't want to have to think about it. You don't have to take pause and be like, okay, what do I do? Let me carry the one and all of that. I mean, I'm being sarcastic, obviously. So let's talk about how we get there, right? So you want to start to build some tools for yourself, and especially for young people, parents like myself, you want to start to get your children involved in these kind of things if and when they show an interest. Oftentimes I have Naomi here setting up the lights with me, setting up the cameras, white balancing the cameras, etc. I started her early. At 2 years old, she was learning how to set up a camera, dial in, Kelvin temperature for color temperature, and all of these different kinds of things. And so you can get to that 10,000 hours by a very young age by simply doing little bits and pieces here and there. And now, not everyone's parents have the expertise to be able to teach them those things. I happen to have that, but there are plenty of opportunities out there. I would be interested to hear in the comments, or by coming onto our Facebook, our LinkedIn pages, and just sending us a message, if that's something that people would be interested for their kids, because it's definitely something we can begin to develop, is some teaching tools about how to get your kids there if they're interested in learning how to do video or film or audio or lighting, these kinds of things. I'd be interested to know if there's anyone who follows us that it would be interested in that kind of thing, because we can begin to develop that and develop some really good tools around that. But how do you get there, right? A really great tool, especially for sound design and sound engineering, is just get out there and start recording stuff, listening to it back, listening to it critically. If you have access to sound software, things we call a DAW, something like a Persona Studio Live is a pretty affordable one, that you can just begin to start mixing and start tweaking and start doing things so that you can get to expertise. One of the biggest things I see in a lot of these forums that we're in is that a lot of people that come up doing stuff in their church, and they just don't know what they're talking about. They only know how to do it one way, and they know how to do it that singular way. And anybody who challenges them all of a sudden is not experienced or doesn't know anything, or it becomes an insulting and belittling environment. We got to get away from that in our society. We got to get away from, I know how to do it this way, and because this is the way I know how to do it, it is the only way to do it. I like to use this expression a lot. There's not there's not one right way to do a thing, but there certainly are a couple of wrong ones. And what we see a lot on the internet, especially since the pandemic, during the pandemic, and since, is this idea that the way we're doing it is the only way to do it, because people have just been putting it together and figuring it out because they were asked to do something for work or for their church or for their kids' school or whatever. And the way they know how to do it, because they're overwhelmed, is the only way to do it. What I would love to be able to do, and we're going to start doing more of this through our social media pages and on our website eventually, is to be able to provide that guidance and provide a forum for people to ask questions and get quality answers in a way that is non-confrontational. Like, listen, I'm well aware that not everyone will be able to get to that expertise at a young enough age, or at all. Like 10,000 hours is a lot of hours, right? But we do need to get there in every field of life. We need to get back to a place where we are treating people with the respect that have gotten to 10,000 hours. And listen, not everyone's an attorney. I'm certainly not an attorney, right? I know some things about the law. I've got family members who are lawyers, but that's not my area of expertise. If I need a lawyer, I'm going to call a lawyer. If I need an accountant, when I do my taxes, I call my accountant and they do it. I'm not an accountant. I don't know. I'm not an expert at that stuff. So we got to get there though, guys. Like we have to begin to realize that there are people putting in the time and the energy and the effort to become an expert at a thing, and stop acting like we know everything all of the time, right? Like, I'm a production expert. I'm not an expert at Russian literature, or like whatever. I just picked the thing out of thin air. But there's plenty I'm not an expert at. There's plenty I'm not an SME in. But there are some things that I am an SME in, and lean into that. And I think that as we continue to build and grow this platform, I would love to hear from people who what do you, in the realms that Vav can help, what do you need guidance in? What do you want help in? Let me tell you a quick story anecdotally. So recently, we completed a recording and a broadcast of a live stream for one of our clients, and the shoot took 100 times longer than it needed to, right? We were able to get it edited, and that took a long time, and we broadcast it out successfully. But the problem is oftentimes I see with this client in particular, but many of our clients, is that they retained us to provide a service, to provide a production and streaming service. And then when we said this is how we want to set up, they then didn't want to do it that way, and the goalposts kept changing, everything kept moving. And so we weren't able to provide the same quality of expertise as we would have if weeks or months ahead of time, they would have said, okay, what do you suggest? And then we give you that answer. And then we do that, right? And we follow those guidelines, so often, working in large production environments for, very, very large companies like JP Morgan Chase, companies like Bank of America, etc. What happens is you have executives who don't know the first thing about cameras or lights or sound or any of that kind of stuff, but they have a protocol or a paradigm they want to live within. And instead of saying, I hired you to be an expert, I'll let you be the expert, what happens is it becomes a conversation that orbits around politics and optics and perception, and it becomes more about managing customer or client perceptions and expectations, and you become more of a personality manager. You're not even managing people, really. You're managing personality defects, right? And so the job becomes more about that, right? We've got to, in our society, allow people to be experts, right? So how do we get there, right? Well, when there's big dollar numbers involved, you're always going to have these complex conversations and complex arguments around ROI. Are we spending our money wisely? How are we project managing this? And in the hat that I wear all the time as a project manager, what ends up happening is you go round and round and round in circles about almost nothing a lot of the times, really. It's unfortunate we don't let our experts be experts, but we should, right? And but how do we do that? Well, we've got to begin to look to source people who've done the 10,000 hours and who understand how to do a thing, and then let people do the things that they're an expert in. I would love to see in the comments what you guys think about all of this. Um, what you would love more training in, and I would love to share some of your stories about, and anecdotally or not, about where you feel like your expertise hasn't been respected, and how we can share some of those stories about the expertise and how we need to grow and what we need to do, not only with VAV and the community that we're building here through our platforms, but also just generally in modern American and Western society, how we solve that, how we begin to re-empower people who have gone to film school, gone to law school, gone to med school, and and built that expertise, right? Because not all of us are experts in anything, and we're certainly not experts in everything, right? So connect with me, connect with our social media platforms, and we'll definitely, there's stories we want to share. Um, Thanks, guys. This has been a quick one. This has been a quick one this week. We didn't have a guest this week. We'll be bringing some more guests in over the next few weeks. Please hit me up on all of our social media channels. This has been VAV Live. You guys have a good rest of your evening, and